On a grey October morning in 2001, the world seemed to pause for a moment in the suburbs of Chicago. Rain tapped gently on the metal roof of a quiet train station, its rhythm steady and soft, as if the sky itself was whispering secrets. Amid the drizzle and the hush, a small girl stood alone on the platform, her presence almost ghostly in the mist. She was 7 years old, her hair damp and tangled, her socks mismatched, one yellow, one blue. In her small hands, she clutched a pink lunchbox, its surface worn and decorated with faded stickers of cartoon animals. Her eyes, wide and searching, scanned every face that passed, every shadow that flickered in the morning gloom. There was no trace of tears, no sign of panic, just a deep, quiet fear that radiated from her in waves. For nearly an hour, she waited, silent and unmoving. Commuters came and then went, umbrellas bobbing as they hurried to their destinations, barely noticing the solitary figure on the platform. But eventually, a station worker, a man with kind eyes and a gentle voice, noticed her. He approached and knelt beside her, asking where her parents were. The girl only shrugged, her lips pressed into a thin line. When he asked her name, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emily?" That was all she would say. Concerned, the worker called the authorities. Emily was taken to a nearby center, where caring hands offered her warm blankets and gentle questions. They checked for missing child reports, ran her fingerprints through databases, searched for any clue that might reveal her past. But there was nothing. No record of her existence, no family name, no history. She was a mystery wrapped in a pink lunchbox and silence. Inside the lunchbox, they found only a small sandwich, a juice box, and a folded piece of paper. On the paper, written in shaky handwriting, were 4 simple words: "Take care of her." It was a plea, or perhaps a command, left by someone who could not stay. With no family to claim her, Emily was placed in temporary care. The woman who took her in was Margaret, a retired school teacher with a gentle manner and a house filled with quiet comforts. Margaret didn't press Emily for answers. She offered her clean clothes, a warm bed, and the comforting glow of a nightlight. She let Emily keep her lunchbox close even as she slept, and she made sure to move quietly around the house, careful not to startle the child, who had already seen too much. Days turned into weeks. Emily settled into the rhythms of Margaret's home: meals at the kitchen table, stories at bedtime, walks in the autumn air. She was polite, always smiling when spoken to, but she never spoke of her parents or what had happened before the train station. She seemed determined to keep her secrets locked away. But Margaret noticed the way Emily's small body would tense at the distant sound of a train whistle, how her hands would clutch at her clothes, how her eyes would dart to the window as if expecting someone or something to appear. It was as if the sound of the trains carried memories that Emily could not put into words. In late November, as the days grew shorter and the air colder, Emily began to open up, just a little. One quiet afternoon, as they sat together folding laundry, Emily asked Margaret a question so soft it was almost lost in the rustle of fabric. "Have you ever gone missing on purpose?" The question lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Margaret's heart ached at the thought, but she simply shook her head and offered Emily a gentle smile. That night, after Emily had fallen asleep, Margaret found herself drawn to the pink lunchbox. She had resisted the urge to look inside before, respecting Emily's privacy. But something about the child's question gnawed at her. Carefully, she opened the lunchbox and examined its contents. Beneath the sandwich compartment, taped under the lining, she discovered a second note. The handwriting was the same, but the words were different. She doesn't know the truth. Please protect her. The message sent a chill down Margaret's spine. It was not a note of abandonment, but a warning. A desperate plea from someone who feared for Emily's safety. Margaret knew she had to find answers. She began to search for clues, reaching out to old friends from her teaching days, scouring online forums, and even returning to the train station where Emily had been found. She pieced together fragments of information. A witness who remembered seeing a man holding Emily's hand before vanishing into the crowd. A discarded train ticket dated 2 days before Emily was discovered. A scarf found near the station with the initials KM embroidered on the edge. Meanwhile, Emily grew more restless. She started to ask more questions, her curiosity and anxiety mingling in her small voice. She wanted to know about trains, about how people could disappear, about whether someone could be 2 people at once, one at home, one outside, hiding. Margaret answered as best she could, but she knew the questions ran deeper than any answer she could give. One evening, as Margaret folded laundry, she found something tucked inside one of Emily's socks, a photograph, worn and bent at the edges. It showed a woman holding a baby, standing in front of a wooden house with a broken fence. The woman's eyes had been scribbled over in pen, obscuring her face. Margaret showed the photo to Emily, who stared at it for a long time before whispering, "I think that's my mum." The next morning, Margaret made a decision. She packed a small bag, bundled Emily into the car, and drove 3 hours to a rural town listed on the back of the photo. The town was little more than a cluster of houses surrounded by trees, its streets quiet and empty. But there, down a gravel road, stood the house from the photograph. The fence still broken, the same mailbox at the end of the drive. Margaret knocked on the door and waited, her heart pounding. After a long moment, a woman in her 30s answered, her eyes wide with shock as she saw Emily step out of the car. She gasped, stumbling back as if confronted by a ghost. Her name was Karen, and she claimed to be Emily's mother. Inside, the house was dim and quiet, filled with the scent of wood smoke. Old toys were stacked in a box near the couch. A pair of tiny shoes sat by the door, untouched for years. Karen made tea but didn't drink it, her hands trembling as she sat across from Margaret, her gaze never leaving the little girl by the window. Karen confessed that her name wasn't really Karen. She had been hiding for years under a different identity. She told them she had fled an abusive marriage when Emily was a baby, but her husband had found them again. Fearing for their safety, she tried to disappear without a trace. When she realized how much Emily remembered, how many questions she asked, she knew she couldn't risk being found. So one night, she left Emily at the train station, hoping someone kind would find her. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she whispered. "I thought she'd be safer if no one knew where she came from. Not even her." Margaret listened, her mind racing. There were no easy answers, no way to erase the fear that haunted Emily or the years lost to silence. But something about Karen's story didn't sit right. The pieces didn't quite fit. Back at home, Emily asked Margaret if they were going to stay with the woman who cried too easily and hugged too tightly. Margaret said they were just visiting. That night, Emily woke from a nightmare, screaming and gasping for breath. "He was there," she cried, "in the house." Margaret held her until morning, her resolve hardening with the sunrise. Margaret returned to the rural town, leaving Emily with a trusted friend. She visited the local library, spoke with a retired sheriff, and searched old newspaper clippings. It didn't take long to find what she was looking for. In 1996, a house had burned down on the edge of town. A man and a child had died inside. The woman who survived had vanished. The photo Margaret had found wasn't from Karen's home. It was from the newspaper article. The woman in the photo was Catherine Marks, the initials on the scarf, the real mother. Margaret confronted Karen, whose real name, it turned out, was Lisa. At first, Lisa denied everything, but when Margaret showed her the newspaper and the photo, her defenses crumbled. She confessed that she had been a neighbor, a friend of Catherine's. When the fire broke out, she had arrived too late to help. But she found the baby, Emily, outside, crawling toward the road. No one knew the baby had survived. Lisa took her and ran, raising her as her own. "I loved her," Lisa said, her voice breaking. "I tried to keep her safe." But love built on lies is fragile. Margaret called the authorities. The investigation was slow and careful. DNA confirmed Emily's connection to the Marks family. Catherine had no surviving relatives, but the truth restored her name. Lisa was charged with kidnapping. But given the unique circumstances and the care she had shown Emily, her sentence was reduced. She didn't fight it. She only wanted Emily to have the truth. Emily didn't understand everything at first, but over time, she began to heal. Margaret adopted her legally the following year. They moved to a quieter town, far from trains and secrets. Emily found solace in drawing. She filled pages with pictures of houses that never burned, lunches that were always eaten, and mothers who never disappeared. And every year on the first rainy day of October, she would take out her old pink lunchbox, clean its dusty corners, and place a new note inside. "I am safe now.